My daughter's fiancé demanded $50K or no wedding. I froze his account at my bank instead. I always thought I'd cry tears of joy when my only daughter got engaged. But the tears I shed that night weren't from joy. They were from disbelief. I remember every second of it like a scene from a movie. My daughter, Lily, stood in my kitchen, twisting the diamond ring on her finger, her face pale as paper. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling, "Evan says we can't go through with the wedding unless we contribute $50,000. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. $50,000? For what? She hesitated. He says it's for the wedding venue, the honeymoon, and, well, for appearances. He doesn't want his family thinking we're, struggling. That last word hit me like a slap. Struggling. My blood boiled instantly. I'd worked 35 years in finance, built a life from nothing, and given Lily everything she ever needed. I wasn't some fool who couldn't afford to help his daughter. But the very idea that some boy thought he could demand money from me, that was a different story. I looked at her. "He said that to you? Demanded it?" Her eyes filled with tears. "He said if we can't show that kind of contribution, maybe we're not ready for marriage." I sat back in my chair, jaw clenched. "He's testing your worth with a price tag." At first, I thought I'd misunderstood the boy. Evan had always seemed polite, sure, a little slick, but charming in that salesman's way. He came from money, or at least he made everyone think he did. His father owned some construction firm, and Evan liked to flash his designer watches and talk about networking with elite clients. I'd always suspected there was more ego than substance under that slick hair and smile, but Lily was in love, and I didn't want to be the overprotective father who ruined things. That night, though, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, remembering every smirk, every offhand comment Evan had ever made. The way he'd once joked that Lily was lucky to have a man with taste. The way he'd corrected me when I offered to pay for the catering, insisting, "My family has standards, sir." I decided I needed to see him myself. The next afternoon, I called Evan and invited him to my office downtown. He arrived in his pressed suit, all swagger and confidence. He didn't even sit down before launching into a speech about financial expectations. "Sir," he said, crossing one leg over the other, "Lily and I want this wedding to reflect our future, successful, elegant, respectable. But you understand, optics matter. My family circle expects a certain presentation. 50,000 would secure the venue, caterer, and, well, for appearances. He doesn't want his family thinking we're, struggling." I folded my hands and studied him. "And what happens if I don't agree?" He smiled. Actually smiled. "Then, respectfully, sir, we might have to postpone the wedding. Maybe indefinitely. I love Lily, but marriage is also a partnership. It's about being aligned socially and financially." The arrogance in his tone made my stomach twist. I'd seen this type before, the kind who built his confidence on illusions. I decided to play along. "All right," I said slowly. "Give me your account details. I'll transfer it myself. You'll have your 50,000 tomorrow." His grin widened. "I knew you'd understand, sir." He left my office like a man who thought he'd just won the lottery. But what he didn't know was that the lottery ran through my bank, the very bank where I'd worked for decades. I had access, oversight, and, most importantly, leverage. That evening, I called a few people in the fraud department, discreetly, of course. Evan's name, as it turned out, was already flagged in one of our systems for suspicious deposits. Apparently, he'd been moving money between accounts under different names, likely his friends, and there were irregular withdrawals that didn't match his employment history. So this wealthy fiancé wasn't wealthy at all. He was barely keeping appearances, financing his lifestyle through other people's money, and my daughter was next on his list. The next morning, I personally froze every account tied to his name through our institution. I wanted to see how quickly the mask would fall. It didn't take long. That night, Lily came home shaking. "Dad, what did you do?" she cried. "Evan's furious. He says the bank froze all his funds and it can't access a cent." I stayed calm. "He said the bank did it?" "Yes, he said someone's trying to ruin him. He even accused you." I met her gaze steadily. "That's because I did." She blinked, stunned. "What?" I sighed. "Sweetheart, I work at that bank. I know what's going on. He's been lying to you, and to everyone else. He's broke. He's been bouncing money between accounts to fake being rich. The $50,000, it wasn't for a wedding. It was to pay off his debts." Lily looked like the air had been sucked out of her lungs. "No, that can't be true." I walked to my desk, opened a folder, and handed her the printouts. Transaction records, flagged accounts, everything. She stared at them, her eyes widening with each page. When she finally looked up, tears streamed down her cheeks. "He said he wanted a partnership." "And he meant one in which you fund his lifestyle," I said gently. "Honey, love shouldn't come with an invoice." The next day was supposed to be their engagement party, a big, fancy event Evan had organized at a luxury hotel. But by noon, rumors started spreading. Evan tried to pay the hotel deposit, and his card got denied. Then his backup card, then another. He caused such a scene in the lobby that security had to escort him out. By evening, it was all over social media. Photos of Evan yelling, headlines about his financial scandal, and whispers about fraud investigations. His so-called friends distanced themselves instantly. The same people who once toasted him with champagne were now pretending they barely knew him. Lily didn't go to the party. She stayed home, curled up on the couch, staring at her ring. I sat beside her quietly, waiting. Finally, she whispered, "Dad, I can't believe I almost married him." I put my arm around her. "You would have found out eventually, but I couldn't stand by and let him humiliate you first." She nodded slowly, her voice shaking. "I just wanted to believe he loved me for me." I smiled sadly. "He didn't even love himself enough to be honest. You don't need that kind of man in your life." 2 days later, she called off the wedding officially. Evan tried calling, texting, even showing up at our house once, shouting about misunderstandings. I met him at the door. "You need to leave," I told him. He glared at me, the arrogance finally replaced by desperation. "You ruined me." "No," I said quietly. "You did that yourself. You tried to buy love with money you didn't have, and you tried to shame my daughter into thinking she wasn't enough. That's on you." He looked like he wanted to argue, but the fight drained out of him. He turned and walked away. That was the last time we saw him. Months passed. Lily started to heal. She found a new job, made new friends, and slowly her laughter returned. Sometimes she'd catch me watching her and smile softly. "You saved me," she'd say. But I always shook my head. "No, I just reminded you who you are." Because that's what this was really about. Not money, not revenge, but dignity. I wanted her to learn that no one, no matter how smooth or charming, gets to make her feel small for where she comes from. And though part of me regretted the chaos, the humiliation, the spectacle of it all, another part of me, the father in me, knew that it had been worth it. Love without respect isn't love. It's manipulation dressed in silk. And as I watched my daughter rebuild her life, stronger and wiser than before, I realized something. I hadn't just protected her that day. I'd taught her the most important lesson of all. Never apologize for who you are, and never let anyone put a price on your worth. Because real love doesn't demand $50,000. It demands character. And that's something no account, frozen or not, could ever buy.